Okay. Hello, my little acorn crop. Please forgive the outdoor sounds. We are actually outside. I have filmed this like 2 other times between the cars and barking dogs and screaming children. I'm probably going to talk really fast, trying to get things in the quiet time. This is, now that you have the hearse, what do you do with it? There's a couple things to consider. You're going to need to get it insured, and you're going to need to get it emissions tested to get it insured. Unless you're not going to get it emissions tested, and that depends on where you are. I know in my state of Arizona, if you're in the metropolitan area like Phoenix or Tucson, you have to get it emissions tested. Whereas if you're in Payson or Show Low, you know, one of those smaller northern towns, you don't have to have emissions testing. Now, I'm not recommending it, but if you get an address in Payson and you insure your car there, you don't get the emissions test. But if you're pulled over and the cop notices the address on your registration is different than your address on your driver's license, there could be some trouble you're going to get into. The other thing you might want to consider is if it's not a daily driver, you could get collector's insurance. I've heard of some people getting their vehicle insured through Hagerty, and the only problem with collector's insurance is sometimes they request your mileage. If you're doing a daily driver with your vehicle, collector's insurance might not be the way to go for you. Also check the legalities in your state. In Florida in 2009, they passed a law that any vehicle that was formerly commercial still had to be insured through commercial insurance, even though, like with a hearse, like this is a private vehicle now, it's not used commercially. You might also want to consider getting glass coverage depending upon how old your vehicle is, the cost to replace the glass, because like this glass is going to be really expensive to replace because it's custom. Whereas, you know, this glass is probably going to be easy to replace. My windshield on this vehicle's just the regular windshield. It's not commercial, but some hearses have the commercial glass, so that'll be more expensive to replace. Also the back window, that'll be more expensive to replace as well because again, it's custom. And especially if you have like the wraparound windshields like from the 50s and 60s, that might cost you $1,000 to replace, at least, you know, in 2017. Also, you're probably going to want to insure it as a hearse, because if you're insured as a station wagon, then you get in an accident, you don't have any coverage because you had a station wagon that was insured, not a hearse. Some insurances that cover hearses are State Farm. I know they do. I'm covered through State Farm. Also, I hear that Geico and Allstate both do hearses, so you shouldn't have any problem with them. But it also depends on, you know, your state, the insurance company, the person you're talking to on the phone at the time, your insurance agent. You know, so some people really balk at insuring hearses or having anything to do with hearses. So another thing that I thought was interesting is with Cadillacs, especially older ones, their VIN number has a Z in it, indicating that it was only a partial chassis that was sold instead of a full vehicle. Thought that was cool, some special trivia. Another thing to consider is parking. Sometimes your spouse won't let you park the hearse at your house. Sometimes your apartment complex won't let you park the hearse at the apartment complex. Sometimes your employer might not allow you to park a hearse at their place of employment. Even your friends might not let you park your hearse in front of their house. And I try to be respectful of that. I had a neighbor that asked me not to park in front of their house, so I try not to. Or if I do, it's only for like 5 seconds while I'm running in the house to get something and then back out. Now remember, as much as we want to think that they're the weirdos,
girls, watch out for those weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
So another thing to consider is people will call the police depending upon where you've parked it, because sometimes people are going to be disturbed, especially if you have a casket in the back. They'll call the cops because they think there's a corpse in there. And just recently, like maybe, I want to say a month ago, there was a funeral director that left a corpse in a hearse for 2 weeks, and it was decomposing and smelling and all this stuff, and the neighbors called the cops. You know, They don't know. They can't tell. People come up to your car and say it smells when it doesn't. You know, it's just their thought process that the bodies smell when they decay. But if they've been embalmed, they really shouldn't. But, you know, depends. And the other thing to consider is, you know, do you live in a place that they salt the roads in the winter? You know, are you driving an old hearse that's falling apart anyway? You know, that if the floor's rusted out, so it's not going to matter how much more rust is there. Or are you rebuilding the hearse and you're going to need to store it? I know some people that get the connexes or the storage containers to store their hearses over the winter. You know, are you going to have to build a garage for it? I can get away with a car cover as long as it's not monsoon season. And then the wind comes up really bad, it'll blow the cover off, and I gotta like lash it onto the car and stuff. So you need to consider these things maybe before you get a hearse, before you rush home with it. But definitely once you have it, you'll probably find some of these problems are going to come up. Tomorrow's Halloween, so have fun. And I hope you enjoy your hearse, because I can tell you that I really enjoy mine. It's very fun. It's fun to drive. It's, you know, definitely worth having. It's worth the headache, I think. So, good night, America, wherever you are, and have a happy Halloween tomorrow.